Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for September 30th, 2025. Today we're going to start off in the church newsroom where it says some 300 single adult Latter-day Saints age 31 and up gathered in historic Nauvoo on Thursday, September 18th to hear remarks from Sister Amy A. Wright, first counselor in the primary general presidency. The group had come for a 4-day conference to socialize, serve, and grow spiritually in the historic setting. Sister Wright closed with the following counsel. My dear friends, the greatest gift you can give to the world, your children, your family, your community, is to keep your covenants. If you want to successfully navigate the challenges of our day and be a light unto others, a light on the hill that cannot be hid, make and keep sacred covenants and follow the counsel of our living prophet. This is the kind of bullshit that constantly left me feeling so unprepared and lost as a member. Keep my covenants? Adults face overwhelming practical challenges like debt, career uncertainty, housing crises, and mental health struggles. The advice, keep your covenants, is a spiritual platitude, not a pragmatic solution. It offers no actionable guidance for navigating real life and actual situations. The council suggests that spiritual compliance will automatically solve real-world problems, and these one-liners from leaders left me feeling shame and inadequacy when I was faithful and still struggled. And emphasizing that success comes from following the counsel of our living prophet discourages the development of crucial adult skills such as critical thinking and personal autonomy. Next, let's meet Brother Sean R. Dixon. The church news says he brings a wealth of personal, professional, and ecclesiastical experience and insight as he begins his service as the second counselor in the new Young Men General Presidency. The personal includes having read the Book of Mormon, receiving a growing testimony at the age of 14, and learning to eschew the pangs of youthful perfectionism in favor of focusing on Jesus Christ and his atonement. The professional is more than 3 decades of work in the church educational system, specifically as a teacher and administrator in seminaries and institutes of religion. And he has shared such service and opportunities with his wife, Sister Michelle Dixon, who has joined with him as Especially for Youth and For the Strength of Youth session advisors for 20 plus years and taught seminary herself as well. And the ecclesiastical includes Brother Dixon's service as a young full-time missionary and later as president of the California Redlands Mission, again alongside Sister Dixon. You know what all of that says to me? They likely know the problematic history of the church and are willing to overlook it. Back to the church news. Looking to the Lord, Brother Dixon said he wants to encourage, nurture, and strengthen the youth of the church, as well as their leaders, in helping them to look to the Lord. Mindful of the many voices ranging from peers to social media that compete for attention and can create distractions and confusion, Brother Dixon hopes that youth can learn to listen to the right voices, the Spirit, their parents, their church leaders, and to trust and follow their guidance. He expressly singled out the role and blessing of modern-day prophets and apostles. Prophets lead the youth to Jesus Christ, he said. It's not the prophet, President Russell M. Nelson, that's the end goal. It's the Savior. But the prophet is faced toward the Savior, and if they follow him, they'll be prepared for what they're going to experience in their lives. The right voices? The years from 12 to 18 are the critical period for establishing personal identity and autonomy. Advice that pre-selects the right voices actively undermines this process. Adolescence is the time when youth must separate their identity from their parents and primary institutions. By explicitly counseling youth to listen only to the Spirit, parents, and church leaders or the prophet, Sean is encouraging an ascribed identity. The youth are counseled to simply adopt the identity handed to them by the Mormon Church, rather than achieving their own through exploration and questioning. This harmful counsel also frames all outside input, peers, social media, as distractions that create confusion, creating a highly sheltered and unsustainable worldview that fails to prepare them for reality. In higher education and in the professional world, they will have to evaluate competing, secular claims and develop the cognitive skill to filter information independently, while this advice trains them for obedience, not critical evaluation. Also, for youth who are LGBTQ+, that the church would say are struggling with same-sex attraction, gender identity, or mental health issues, the voice of the prophet or church leaders often mandates celibacy, strict behavioral control, or institutional solutions. This advice implicitly tells them to dismiss the voices of secular therapists, counselors, or supportive friends in favor of the single institutional voice, which can be detrimental to their well-being. The article then says, sustained in the Saturday morning general session of April 2025 General Conference, the new Young Men General Presidency, including Sean Dixon, began serving August 1st. Born and raised in Provo, Utah, Brother Dixon read the Book of Mormon at age 14. That was absolutely life-changing. After that, the gospel became real and alive for me, he said. It makes sense to me then that he is encouraging youth to follow in his footsteps. When he was 14, he began to outsource his identity to the church through the Book of Mormon and a testimony. Back to the article. After a bachelor's degree in family science and a master's in education, Brother Dixon began what has become a 30-plus year career in seminaries and institutes of religion, first teaching seminary for 18 years in Utah County. Most recently, he served as director of the Utah Valley Institute of Religion for 5 years before recently being named as the regional director for the Utah South Institute region, overseeing institutes from Utah County to St. George. Sister Dixon has also taught seminary, including recently as a substitute teacher over an extended period. She is, in her own right, a phenomenal teacher, Brother Dixon said of his wife. Together we've been equally yoked in our faith and our love for the youth. We've been engaged in the work of the Lord our whole life together. That was an interesting way for Sean to attempt to compliment his wife. The praise is high, but the necessity of adding the qualifier in her own right undercuts the compliment. It suggests that her primary identity is Brother Dixon's wife, and her professional skill is a surprising secondary trait she possesses despite that primary status. If Brother Dixon were genuinely trying to give pure praise, he would likely have simply said, "She is a phenomenal teacher," and allowed her skill to stand on its own merits. The addition of "in her own right" draws attention to the power dynamic between the couple. The article then says, Brother Dixon recalled being floored by the new calling, then feeling a mix of being humbled and excited because of his love for the youth of the church. It was just a big mix of emotions, but I felt a lot of peace come, almost as the Lord assuring me, "This is my will, and I am there with you, and you just need to trust in me." While Sean seems like a good person, the most significant problem with that last sentiment is that a deep personal conviction that a role is my will, meaning God's will, can create a belief in personal infallibility regarding one's decisions. Once a leader believes his actions are sanctioned by God, he can become resistant to constructive criticism, dissenting opinions, or feedback from subordinates and peers. He may view opposition to his ideas not as a challenge to his judgment, but as an act of resistance against God's will itself, making him less accountable and more rigid. While I hope this doesn't happen with Sean, I have seen it in the prophet and the Quorum of the 12. Once someone believes they are backed by God, they can do terrible things without feelings of remorse. Next, let's go to the Salt Lake Tribune for this update. 3 disaffected Latter-day Saints whose long-fought fraud and racketeering lawsuit against their one-time church involving tithing got rejected in August are asking an appeals court to reconsider. Laura Gaddy, Lyle Small, and Leanne Harris have filed for a review by the full 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, saying the 3-judge panel's ruling last month mistakenly refused to delve into their legal claims by invoking the church autonomy doctrine, which bars courts from probing religious matters. They're now seeking what's called an en banc review by the 12-judge appeals court based in Denver in the latest turn in their suit against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, first filed in 2019. Only if the church has a sincerely held religious belief in lying for the Lord, the brief argues, can they plausibly defend their conduct under the federal fraud statutes. In a would-be friend of the court brief filed alongside the Gaddy appeal, a self-described stay-at-home mother from Provo, Candace Colbeth, argues that treating church autonomy as the first basis for examining the case threatens to create constitutional black holes where rights vanish without remedy. Colbeth said in an interview her motion to file an amicus brief, which includes the brief itself, stemmed from a family member's divorce case in which she argues on-the-stand testimony involving ecclesiastical pronouncements from W. Christopher Waddell, a member of the church's presiding bishopric, unfairly preempted legal fact-finding. Personally, I think the church misrepresented tithing, and I think they did it on purpose, knowing exactly what they were doing and why. But do I think they will lose this lawsuit? Sadly, no. Back to the article. In their latest appeal, filed September 12th by Salt Lake City-based attorney Kay Birmingham, Gaddy and her co-plaintiffs counter that their assertions of deception and concealment against the church over tithing could be decided under neutral legal principles without having to decide actual matters of faith. August's 36-page ruling, they contend, incorrectly turned aside the question as to how sincerely church leaders themselves believed some of their own teachings, which they contend could be decided under separate case law not entangled with faith. Despite depictions of Smith poring over gold plates being widely circulated for generations, the plaintiffs assert church leaders did not sincerely believe that version, given that Smith's seer stone was held in church vaults for nearly a century before it was revealed to the public in 2015. The central legal question of the sincerity of those beliefs, the plaintiffs contend, can be decided without spilling into wider questions of faith itself, which would be barred under the First Amendment, and protections under the church autonomy doctrine. The ultimate answer, the plaintiffs state, was that the church did not believe their correlated historical narrative. Utah, they contend, has a profound interest in protecting the public against fraud by applying neutral legal principles in the case, given the Beehive State has one of the highest per capita rates of affinity fraud and Ponzi schemes in the nation. I will continue to bring updates as the case progresses. Now let's go to the church news for this announcement. The Church History Department of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is collaborating with Yale University Press to publish the Nauvoo, Illinois Journal of William Clayton, reported a September 25th news release on churchhistorianspress.org. We are so pleased to work with Yale to make this important text available to the public. They have earned their reputation as one of the best scholarly presses in our field. We are eager for scholars and members to read this long-awaited volume, Matthew McBride, Director of Publications in the Church History Department, said in the news release. William Clayton joined the church in England. He was baptized by Heber C. Kimball in the River Ribble on October 21, 1837. Clayton moved to Nauvoo, Illinois in 1840. Between 1842 and 1846, he was a clerk, treasurer, temple recorder, and confidant of Joseph Smith and his wife, Emma Smith. Clayton was the clerk of the first company of pioneers to enter the Salt Lake Valley in 1847. He penned the words to the pioneer hymn, Come, Come, Ye Saints, in April of 1846. Clayton also invented an early version of the odometer, an instrument used for measuring distance. He served a mission to England from 1852 to 1853. He died in Utah on December 4, 1879, at the age of 65. It would be hard to overstate the importance of William Clayton's journal for understanding the Nauvoo era of church history, said Alex Smith, a volume editor on the project and a co-editor for 6 volumes of the Joseph Smith papers. Many insights in the journal about Joseph Smith's daily activities and religious teachings, Nauvoo's civic and ecclesiastical administration, the city's social life, and the lived experience of plural marriage are found nowhere else, Alex Smith said in the news release. Do you think they are equal parts excited and worried? I imagine that they are fully prepared and have all of their apologetic works ready to counter anything in the journals that might raise red flags for members. I can't wait for the myriad of post-Mormon podcasts that will delve into these journals and break them down for the rest of us. And last up today, let's go to this great quote that really got me thinking. It says, "My view of homeless people changed forever when I learned that more than half of them were foster kids who aged out of the system and were left with no family or resources." To which someone responded, "If you ever had a move back in with your parents stage, you have no business judging homeless people. The only difference between you and them is you were privileged enough to have a fallback." And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.